For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has become one of the most mysterious and controversial pieces of cloth on the face of the planet.
The Shroud of Turin has haunted historians for centuries, but no one was ready for what artificial intelligence would uncover.
The mysterious
of people will be getting a rare televised glimpse at one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries, the Shroud of Turin.
This Christian holy relic is referred to as the Shroud.
My personal opinion, though, I think when it comes to contacting the real form and figure of the person of Christ, I just think I've got to go to the Shroud.
I think I might have seen that, and I thought to myself, that guy looks like me.
For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has whispered a question no one could answer. Scientists called it a hoax. Believers called it a miracle. But now, AI has entered the story. AI just decoded the biggest mystery. And it just didn't just scan a piece of cloth. It stared into the most mysterious object in Christian history and built a face from it. The face of Jesus. It didn't just shock researchers. It left Jonathan Roumie speechless.
It's arresting. Let's just say that if the Shroud truly is Jesus' image, if it is, Mel Gibson got it right in The Passion. Because that man, on this image, Catholics believe it's Jesus. Words cannot describe the physical pain that he must have endured.
A hidden detail, buried in shadows for 600 years, finally came to life. And now, people online believe there's a message hidden in the cloth. A message no one saw until AI brought it to life. But is that possible? Wait till the end of the video to answer. Can technology do what history never could? Or are we gradually crossing the line between what's spiritual and what's digital?
And so the Shroud is believed to be a holy relic because you don't get much more holy than the actual.
Let's first start with what the Shroud of Turin is. It is a long piece of linen cloth, about 14 feet from end to end. It's old, worn, and burned on the edges from a fire in the 1500s. But the real mystery is what's in the middle. And for over 600 years, people have argued about what it is. Is it a holy relic, a hoax, or a mystery? But now, AI has entered the room. And when it scanned the cloth, not just the image, but the patterns, shapes, shadows, it gave back a face. And that's when the questions really began. What did AI see that we never could? In early 2024, something strange happened. A group of engineers, artists, and AI researchers decided to try something new. They took the image on the Shroud of Turin, the mysterious, blurry marks no one fully understands, and fed it into powerful AI programs. Mid-Journey, Stable Diffusion, and facial reconstruction tools used in museums and forensics. They didn't expect much. Maybe just a basic face, some rough shape. But what came out wasn't simple at all. The AI was able to build a man's face from the strange shadows. Not cartoonish or blurry. It was real, sharp, with soft eyes and wounded features, symbolizing a kind of peace behind the pain.
Ever since the Shroud first really appears in history, there's been controversy about it, and there have been questions about its authenticity. In 1988, a group of scientists were able to get permission to get a sample from the Shroud and to subject it to radiocarbon dating.
And that's when people started whispering, because the face looked familiar. Not like just anyone, but like someone we've seen before. Who exactly was it? To unravel the face behind and what it really represents, let's go back to the cloth itself. What exactly lies in the middle of the Shroud of Turin? If you look closely enough at the Shroud of Turin, there's something strange in the middle. It's a faded image, like the shadow of a man, front and back, lying flat, arms crossed. You can make out wounds, a crown of thorns, a cut on the ribs. It looks like someone who suffered.
The Shroud of Turin is this amazing relic. At bottom, it's a piece of cloth. It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man. And the crucified man calls us to remember Jesus' death and resurrection.
The Bible talks about the burial cloths. All 4 of the Gospels mention that Jesus was taken down from the cross. He was wrapped in linen, and then his body was put in the tomb.
Believers say it's the burial cloth of Jesus, the same one that wrapped him after the cross. They call it proof, a holy sign that his body passed through the cloth and left behind a kind of light.
Believe that based on the evidence, 102 scientific disciplines have spent over 600,000 hours of scientific study on the Shroud of Turin, and the great majority of them have concluded the shroud is indeed 2,000 years old. And based on my biblical scholarship, I can assure you that no one was crucified the way Jesus of Nazareth was crucified on April 3rd, AD 33. We know the exact date. It's the best established fact.
But skeptics don't buy it. They say it's a clever fake, made hundreds of years later to fool the faithful. Even the Vatican isn't sure. They say it's a mystery worth honoring, but not confirming. Still, the image remains.
Now, the Vatican does not have a position on...
Now, most people didn't believe something like this could ever exist, especially the face picked up by the AI module. Who really was it? It looked a lot like Jonathan Roumie. Yes, the actor who plays Jesus in The Chosen.
My personal opinion, though, I think when it comes to contacting the real form and figure of the person of Christ, I just think I've got to go to the Shroud of Turin and really pray with the shroud. And I know there's been a number of renditions of drawings and paintings that depict that figure.
So Shroud of Turin took all the 3D data from that and created a computer model of what the man in the shroud would have looked like. And it looks a lot like you. All right, we're warm.
I think I might have seen that, and I thought to myself, that guy looks like me. It was a little creepy, in a good way.
Take a look.
Oh, man. Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Let me see.
That's the one.
There's a little glare there. Let me see. Wow. Yeah, looks a lot like you. So I'll make sure.
The man millions now associate with Christ's image. Was this just coincidence?
Inspired a new artificial intelligence image of Jesus. This image, based on the face of Jesus in the shroud, has gone viral across social media networks and matches traditional depictions.
Could a machine without a soul accidentally build a face that mirrors the man who spent years stepping into that sacred role? The more Jonathan Roumie stared at the AI-generated face rebuilt from the shroud, the quieter he became. And finally, in a soft voice, he made a sentence that held everyone spellbound. He didn't say it looked like him or shrug it off entirely. He looked unsettled, almost moved to silence. Jonathan said, "That face carries a weight I can't explain." This wasn't about semblance or looking alike, he said. It was about reflection. But reflection of what? Was he seeing years of prayer and performance staring back at him? Or had something beyond Jonathan found a way to speak through pixels?
Beyond the surface was in Japan when the nuclear bombs went off. So whatever took place to create this image in this shroud, a first century man who was highly tortured, and they show the full-size shroud, and those who are familiar with the Shroud of Turin, it's believed to be the shroud of Jesus Christ. It traveled for centuries under kings and guards, and it was stolen. Like the history of this shroud is fascinating.
It wasn't part of his script. He didn't plan on talking about it. But during a live stream, Jonathan Roumie once again brought the audience to a holy hush. Because what he speaks about the Shroud of Turin goes beyond a place of curiosity or intellectual fascination.
Energy raised up the imprints. The imprint on the shroud is actually a raised surface. And essentially, from what I could gather from looking at this presentation, that this showed up, it's raised on a molecular level, and the only other time that they've seen an imprint that was left a physical mark of vibration, an imprint.
Like most Catholics, Roumie is convinced the shroud is real. He calls it a little momentum left behind by the Lord, like a fingerprint from the resurrection. a physical echo of something spiritual. And if you're someone who struggles with faith, Jonathan likens the shroud to Jesus telling Thomas, "Touch and believe." It's not blind faith, but an evidence of something divine. Something brutal, yes, but also glorious.
And the study that debunked it were debunked for anybody that didn't know. They're like, oh, it was made and it was a medieval forgery. It wasn't. They found out that the piece that was tested to tell whether or not this shroud was a medieval forgery was actually a patch. The shroud suffered fire damage, and so they tested a patch that was repaired in the...
Then he shares a moment that's hard to forget. While scouting for the Chosen in California, he stumbled upon a room completely dedicated to the shroud. And what he saw stunned him. Not just the full-size display of the image, but the science behind it.
This is my t-shirt. Thanks for those who... My Shroud of Turin t-shirt. When Maria and I were scouting in the beginning of the week, this ranch in Southern California, they have all these little meeting rooms, and in one of the rooms was set up an entire presentation about the Shroud of Turin by, I think that was put together by the guy who's like the world's foremost expert on the shroud. Like everything about it, the anomalies of it, the fact that there's a literal...
Roumie compares it to nuclear imprinting, the kind last seen after the bombings in Japan. Think about this. The spitting image, this face of agony and peace, isn't painted as science supposes. Neither was it drawn. It's embedded, etched by light. Possibly resurrection light. And if that's true, then we're not looking at art. We're looking at a divine moment. A moment when death was crushed and eternity broke through the linen.
The Middle Ages. The rest of it still stands. So it's an image of a man that was created using nuclear energy. A man who was severely tortured and flagellated. And when you see the full-size thing, like, lit up, it's arresting. Like, let's just say that if the shroud truly is Jesus's image, if it is, Mel Gibson got it right in The Passion.
Jonathan also reminds us of something many didn't know. The infamous carbon dating tests that once labeled the shroud a medieval forgery, they tested a patch, a section added after fire damage centuries later. The rest of the cloth remains untouched, ancient, and consistent with the time and place of Christ's death. To Roumie, this isn't just apologetic. It's a wonder that makes you stand as if on holy ground. He hasn't seen the shroud in person. Not yet, but you can hear in his voice he wants to. Not as a tourist, but as a disciple.
Because that man, this image, Catholics believe it's Jesus. Words cannot describe the physical pain that he must have endured. Anyway.
This isn't the first time someone came face to face with something sacred and felt undone. Think of Saint Padre Pio. One day, he woke up with wounds on his hands and feet, exactly where Jesus was nailed. Doctors couldn't explain it, but the faithful didn't need them to. Then there's Joan of Arc, a teenager, barely old enough to be taken seriously, who heard voices she believed came from heaven. And according to Mel, the image even carries what appears to be the faint outline of Roman coins placed over the man's eyes. Coins dated to the exact period of Christ's crucifixion.
But they have now verified that it does actually go back to that time period. For a while, they were testing pieces that had been repaired in the 13th century or, you know. So.
What is the latest on that, Jamie? Can you see, like...
I was trying to get that. I've 2 different articles from within the last 6 months saying
the
opposite things. So
opposite, of course.
Dig into which one sounded the most accurate.
Well, it's such a crazy thing to even try to verify. But what are you saying? You're saying that this is really the shroud that Jesus was covered in? So you're saying Jesus historically absolutely did exist, and we think that this is the shroud that covered him.
This isn't just another vague spiritual chatter. It is grounded in history, science, and raw fascination. Even Rogan, who often plays the skeptic, admits it's crazy. It's not a painting. It's something else. And then Mel dropped a line that's hard to forget.
Incredulity, people's immediately their hackles raise, like, wait a minute, and they're just instead of like looking at it objectively, they almost always want to look at it from a point of view of disproving it immediately, dismissing it immediately.
But that's that's science, isn't it? You have to sort of you play the devil's advocate. And that.
What these two men stumbled into, perhaps without fully knowing, was sacred ground. Because if the Shroud of Turin is real, if that faint, haunting image was formed at the moment of resurrection, then it's more than a relic. It's a divine photograph. And the closer science gets to explaining it, the louder heaven seems to whisper, "Behold the man."
These people up.
Maybe. Who knows? I mean, it's got to be someplace, right? They buried it. They lost track of it.
Yeah.
But, man, it used to be. And all the stories are, if you even touched it, you'd fall over, you know, because it was constructed electrically somehow.
Yeah, like what is that? What's in there? Yeah, why is it giving people cancer if they're really protecting it?
I think it's the actual structure of the container it's in that is the problem. That's my thought on it. I could be wrong. But I think inside it they have...
And as promised, Jonathan Roumie wasn't quite done with his awe of the Shroud of Turin. Those voices led her to war and changed the course of history. And in the end, they led her to a fire. These aren't isolated moments. All through history, there have been stories of strange encounters and impossible signs. And the Shroud is no exception. People have flown across the world just to see it. Some say they felt peace standing in front of it. Others burst into tears. A few claim it healed them, and no one walks away from it feeling nothing.
That there are no substances on the cloth that were conceivably used by an artist, and the fact that the blood on the cloth is human blood, it would suggest that...
So what happens when that image, the one tied to centuries of mystery, gets a new face? Not carved in stone or painted in a church, but generated by a machine? It's still the same shadow, still the same wounds. But now it has the eyes of someone we know, someone alive. Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe it's part of a pattern that's been repeating for centuries. Except this time, it came through a screen. But the strangeness didn't stop there. When the AI finished building the face from the shroud, something else happened. People started noticing details they hadn't seen before. There were deep marks across the forehead and cheeks, swelling around the eyes, streaks that looked like blood following the folds of the cloth. But then someone online did something different. They zoomed in pixel by pixel. They sharpened the shadows, tweaked the light, ran the image through a few more tools. And that's when it showed up, right along the forehead ridge, very faint, but shaped like letters. Some say it looks like old Aramaic, and those letters might spell something like, I am. No scientist has confirmed it yet or published it in a journal. But people started talking. Reddit threads popped up. Pastors gave sermons about it. Because even if it's not proof, it still gives people chills. If that phrase really is there, I am, what is that? It's what God said to Moses from the burning bush. It's what Jesus said before the crowds picked up stones. So is this just digital noise? Or has that message been quietly waiting inside the image all along?
Very popular in about the mid-1850s until about World War I, and then the devotion started to die out a little bit. But it was based on the image of the Shroud of Turin and contemplating the Holy Face. It was actually so popular that St. Therese of Lisieux, her name that when she joined the Carmelites was St. Therese, or Therese of the Child Jesus and the Face of Christ. Or, I mean, I want to make sure I get that accurate. It was something like that.
Yeah.
Very close. That the Holy Face devotion was part of her actual name that she took. And then...
Not everyone thinks this is a miracle. Some people say, hold on, it's just AI. It's not magic. And they have a point. AI doesn't know faith. It doesn't feel awe. It only looks for patterns. It pulls pieces from thousands of images and blends them together. That's why some experts think the face looks like Jonathan Roumie. They say the AI saw too many pictures of him playing Jesus online and used that to shape its answer.
And so based on this scientific evidence, and many of it is breaking news for your audience, such as the fact that the Institute of Crystallography in Italy has confirmed using wide-angle X-ray scattering technology that the Shroud of Turin, which again is currently in Italy, but is indeed 2,000 years old. We believe it to be the very burial cloths.
But here's where it gets complicated.
Even people who don't believe in any of this admit the whole phenomenon still feels strange. Because the final image isn't robotic. It feels human, almost too human. There's something in the eyes, something gentle and tired. And somehow, that face makes people feel like they're being seen. And that's the part no one can fully explain. How can a machine that doesn't have a soul create a face that touches one? Believers say it's not the shroud that matters, but the cloth. But the image has carried for hundreds of years. And now, thanks to a digital push, maybe something hidden is being revealed. Or maybe we're just seeing what we were always meant to. But this time, we're finally looking close enough.
This is my t-shirt. Thanks for those who... My Shroud of Turin t-shirt. When Maria and I were scouting in the beginning of the week, this ranch in Southern California, they have these all these little meeting rooms, and in one of the rooms was set up an entire presentation about the Shroud of Turin by, I think that was put together by the guy who's like the world's foremost expert on the shroud. Like everything about it, the anomalies of it, the fact that there's a literal...
Jonathan Roumie once said something simple, but heavy. You can't play Jesus without risking being changed. He didn't just mean acting. He meant what happens deep inside when you carry that name and that face. People don't just scroll past the image. They stop and stare. Some cry, some pray, some feel chills without knowing why. It doesn't matter if you believe in the cloth or not. Something about that face feels close, like it knows you, like it's asking something of you. So ask yourself, if the most powerful technology we've ever built looked in an ancient cloth and came back with one face, why did it choose that face? Do you think AI got it right? Or is something deeper going on here? Drop your thoughts below. And if you've ever felt something just by looking,